yes, God has been good. I've been to a lot of countries, but I feel our people are not living life to the fullest where they are until they return back home. And then as soon as they come back home, most of them don't want to come back. I know a lot of people that came in for just a visit, and these guys don't want to go back. So it's just a sense of pride knowing that you have a home to go to as Black people.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I hope you're fine, super fine, very fine, wherever you are. So, I'm going to address some issues today. Why Black Americans don't want to come back to Africa? This question is so multi-faced. And just before that, I want to give it a little bit of a context. Don't you feel guilty? I'm not talking about not the real story. I'm just giving it a short story. Do you think that a child who is born and separated from their family, and later on when they grow up, they know that this is my father, that is my mother, this is my family. Do you think this child would go and want to know more about their parents or want to know about more about their lineage? Also, should the parents force the child to come back to the family? I want you to ponder along those questions. Now, a person with a good conscience will try to find out, which is normal to any human being, will try to find out, how do my people look? How do they talk? Are we similar? Do we share some physical features? Is there something common amongst us that when somebody says we look alike, and these features will make you evaluate. Coming back to the context, Black Americans or African Americans, the same happens with you. Whether you deny it, whether I don't know what you call yourself, Black Americans, African Americans, bro or sis, we are one people. I'm not trying to force you onto it. Now, I don't want to say much. Let's watch this video. It's more of a podcast, and we'll say something after it. I'll be giving you the comments from the video that I took from it, the comments of Black Americans and African Americans that said much about the video, so that we may hear why Black Americans don't want to come back to Africa. No one is forcing you to come back to Africa, but let's just watch this video.
This is kind of an interesting question for you. I'm a Russian Jew. At 4 years old, my entire extended family moved out of Russia into the US because of the horrible treatment that Jews would get in Russia. We couldn't get into certain universities. We couldn't get into certain jobs. One of my relatives' brothers got killed when they found out that he was leaving the country. It was, it's one of those situations where after a while, my family said, there's no point in raising children in this place. And recently I interviewed this artist named Sakardi. He's the biggest artist in Ghana, biggest rapper in Ghana. And we were talking about something called the Year of Return. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
I am familiar, yeah.
Last year was the Year of Return. It's like a movement to make people come back home. So I endorsed it because I believe in that.
The Year of Return, that's amazing.
Yes. So last year's the Year of Return. This year, I don't know if it's official, but they didn't want to keep it just last year, just being the Year of Return, because it's a whole movement. It's not going to be just a year. This is a way of thinking way forward. So I think moving on, they were trying to, the tag, I think it was beyond the return. So now it still keeps going. Like people needs to come back. The lifestyle in the States, I've been there. I've been to London. I've been to Germany. I've been to, yes, God has been good. I've been to a lot of countries, but I feel our people are not living life to the fullest where they are until they return back home. And then as soon as they come back home, most of them don't want to come back. I know a lot of people that came in for just a visit, and these guys don't want to go back. So it's just a sense of pride knowing that you have a home to go to as Black people.
Yeah, it was this whole thing that they set up in Ghana, I think about a year ago or so. And Idris Elba, whose mom is from Ghana, and Boris Kojo and a lot of people went over there, and they just talked about how, look, all this bad treatment that you're getting in America, come back to Africa, where we own everything. Everyone in the government looks like us. Clearly there's a history of slaves being taken out of the country, people being kidnapped as slaves to be taken out of the country, but it's not the same level of brutality that happened in America. Why do you think more people don't just say, I'm just going to leave America and just go to Africa.
Well, unlike many immigrants who come to America, we don't have the same relationship with Africa. That doesn't mean we shouldn't. In fact, that's one of the travesties of being brought over here as slaves, is that we lost our connections to our home countries. We lost our lineage.
Right.
We literally lost our names.
Right. But we didn't have any connections to America.
No, and you decided to come over here.
Yeah.
You were fleeing something.
We were fleeing.
Right.
But here's, when you take these situations, it's kind of a similar thing. And, I mean, there's the whole racist, go back to Africa. That's not what I'm saying at all.
No, I know. Yeah.
I'm actually saying, hey, look, and for example, I just interviewed Akon, who's made millions of dollars in Africa. Like he became successful in America, became a millionaire in America. And instead of just saying, I'm going to keep putting my money over here, he started businesses in Africa. He actually did the whole Lighting Africa project, which, and I just interviewed him about this. 350 million homes now have electricity, thanks to this guy.
Yeah.
How many Africans have electricity now, thanks to you?
Oh, man. I couldn't even estimate amounts, but we're literally in 16 countries now. And Africa got, man, I couldn't even tell you, bro. But we're probably close about 350, maybe 400 million people with electricity now.
500 million people have electricity.
Yeah.
Thanks to you. Do you ever just sit back and say, God damn, man? Because let me tell you something.
Funny, I never did before COVID. COVID kind of made me understand and realize how much impact I made in that time I was working. Because normally when you're working, you're just in tunnel vision. You don't even see what's going on and what you're accomplishing.
Because I don't care how smart you are when you're born. Right. I don't care how intelligent, how analytic you are. If you don't have electricity, you're just going to be doing farm work.
Period.
You can't do nothing.
What can you do?
What can you do without electricity?
Absolutely.
You can't even learn outside of whatever tattered books are in your village.
Right.
You can't go on the internet.
None.
You can't you can't Google anything. You can't look up something on YouTube.
Right. You can't
do nothing.
You can't do
I remember thinking the other day, before Google, if two people were arguing about a fact, whoever could argue better would be the winner of that argument.
Right.
You couldn't say, well, let me look it up.
Right.
Whoever would just argue better.
Whoever had the best argument.
The best argument would win. That would become the fact.
Now you could pull up stats.
You could pull it up. A guy who grew up in Senegal.
Yeah.
In a house with no electricity, who just wanted to give electricity to his grandmother because she didn't want to move into the city. And, and he even said, everyone he knows that went over to Africa became successful, from the US. So why do you think there isn't more of that type of push?
I think the reason why it's not a legitimate push for us to go back to Africa in this positive sense is because there is a disconnection, I think, between African Americans and the country of Africa. Some of it is...
Continent of Africa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting that. Sure did. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. But I think there is a lot of disconnection between African Americans here and the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with, we're not comfortable admitting it, but many of us, especially those who have never been to Africa, hold perceptions and biases about what Africa is actually like, right? And I mean, I've been to South Africa. I went to Kenya on my honeymoon. I want to explore more of Africa because most of the people I know that have been to Africa, and I know plenty of my friends went on that year return trip, is that once you're there, you feel the immediate connection. It just feels good, much like it does here in America when you go to cities or to places where everybody in there looks like you. There's a sense of comfort. You're able to relax a little bit more as opposed to when you're in mixed environments, or as most of us are in environments where we're the minority. But I think a lot of us have just don't have enough education about what Africa is, what it's able to offer. I think we hold some very common misperceptions about it not being civilized, about Africa, inability for us to make money there as we would here. I mean, I've said this before about this country, and it still bears to be true. America ran the greatest PR campaign in the world. All right. When people say best nation on earth, best country in the world, those are affirmations. they're not actually facts sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Is that, but most of us,
the land of opportunity.
land of opportunity.
Yeah.
Like these are very positive affirmations. And this
Mhm.
is not to suggest that our democracy has not worked in many ways or that this hasn't been a land of opportunity for some people. Of course it has. There's no doubt about it. But the idea that we are the gold standard with these ideals is not exactly true. A lot of us have bought into the American PR campaign, and we haven't explored the world enough to know that there are other places where there is legitimately a better life. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us would be surprised if we had the opportunity to go to Africa about how well we would thrive there and what that would mean. I mean, and some of it is just emotional. I mean, obviously, if you're an African American living today, you've been here your whole life. You don't, even if you've explored the world, your way of life is here. And I don't blame people also for feeling as if, hey, I've poured this much into this country and I know it has its problems, but I feel like this is the best place for me. I don't blame them for feeling that connection. But there is something to be said that at some point, if things don't change here, if it looks like we're still kind of stuck in the same flying pattern, I would not be surprised if more African Americans here decide not just about returning to Africa, but just living abroad, period, where they feel like they may be safer and where they feel like they may have more equality.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine, Napoleon from Tupac's group, The Outlaws, he converted to Islam and he moved his entire family to Saudi Arabia. And he couldn't be happier. He could not be happier. He knows that his kids are safe. He knows there's no drugs or guns, like the way he grew up in Jersey. No one's getting murdered around him. You know, he's had a lot of murders in his life.
Yeah.
From his actual parents getting murdered, like in front of him. And he has no regrets whatsoever.
I know some friends who feel that same way about Dubai.
Completely foreign country. He had to learn the language. He had to do this, but he was fully accepted. And yeah, I've been to Africa. I've been to Senegal. I've been to Egypt. I've been to Jordan, Bahrain. You know, in northern Africa. These are dope places. Yeah, I mean, and it also gives you a better understanding.
Now, probably we all have learned, we all have seen what's going on there. We have agreed that not all Black Americans want to come to Africa. Some African Americans want to come to Africa, you know, and some people are already investing in Africa. I won't mention them. You know them because you normally follow them because you see them. Africans are not calling you to come back to Africa. And I'll say this, the reason as to why I'm not calling you to come back to Africa. God is the one who is using me to always wake up and tell you to come back to Africa. Africa. God sends his people back to Africa. Most of the people who you see them coming to Africa, spirits send them. I know you'll say that, oh, this boy is saying crap. Normally his videos, he normally says crap, you know. But I'm telling you the truth. It is the spirit. Africa itself is calling you at home. Remember when I began this video, I told you a given story of this child who was trying to look the other members of the family, and they're looking the physical features. They're looking if they look alike. They're looking if, you know, what are they sharing in common? Black Americans or African Americans. I know you always do this. You always look at Africans, and whether you agree or not, and some of you are in denial, whether you agree or not, we look alike 100%. If I could say 101%, we look alike. You know, and I'm sorry if I'm offending somebody in this video. Man, I gotta tell you, I gotta tell you how it is, you know. I don't want to lie to you. So we share some features. And Africa as a continent is the one which calls you. When you wake up in the morning and feel like I need to go to Africa, it is the spirit that calls you. And you need to know that. Now, without much further ado, I'm going to read you these comments about Black Americans. I want to get their opinion so that I not only share my perspective about this, but I also need to share the perspective of other people. Well, but just before that, um, well, let me just read the, you know, let me just read the comments for you. I wrote them down. I hope you have the patience to read these comments with me. So first, somebody said that African Americans don't like to travel, and that's the reason as to why they're not coming to Africa. Somebody also said that how could they bring us over here when blacks were already here? I know. Some Black Americans claim that they are the Aboriginals. They existed there before even Africans were taken to the United States as workers. I don't want to use that term. It's a bad term, you know. Um, I don't know. Even if it is not slave, but at some point, those Africans who call themselves Aboriginals, they came from Africa. Number two, how can I move back to a place I've never been to? I was born in America, so that's where I chose. My skin color has nothing to do with my choices, with my life choices, and I refuse to let anybody try to convince me otherwise. Besides, I would leave this country when so many good brothers. Okay, I will not leave this country when so many brothers, good, good brothers and sisters, fought long and hard for my right to exist in this land. Nah, all that go back mess has nothing definitely and has fallen on the deaf ears far as I'm concerned. Another person said, not all black person are from Africa. The Aboriginal tale. A lot are from this side to start. Why would we move to somewhere we ain't from instead? Makes sense, homie. I mean, back to the story that I began saying, this child who was born and separated from the family, they have the choice to come back home. But there's one thing they need to know. They need to understand their history. They need to understand who they are. You might deny that you're not African, you're not related to African thing, but deep down, your conscience, the identity crisis which is going on between the black Americans and African Americans, it's something which has always been going on, you know. But try deeply, you will realize that we look alike, you know. You realize that we look alike and we are one people. Guys, tell me what you think in the comment section. This is Eugene from Kenya, your brother from Kenya. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.